And a happy Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. We're off to a pretty soggy start so far this morning, but as we go into the afternoon, we are going to have a good amount of talking points when it does come to your forecast because not everyone is going to see the same environment for the second half of the middle of the work week. But then we get into the end of the work week. It is lots of good news, and in fact, it's looking like some pretty good news as we head into Valentine's Day. But after Valentine's Day, that's where things start to turn to the messier side of the forecast once again. So we'll break down everything that you need to know right here and right now. So 24-hour rainfall totals. Since the rain got going as of early this morning, almost everyone has received something in the way of at least a very light shower, but it does look like for the most part, your totals are just in the form of maybe some light rain. We are really struggling to even find some totals with about 1/10 of an inch of rain. We do see some up here in Macon, maybe down in portions of Twiggs County. Everyone else below 1/10 of an inch of rain across Baldwin County, Jones County, over into Washington County, up into Hancock County. And it's the same story down to the south as well, where we can spot maybe some areas that have seen a little bit more accumulation. Actually, finally have a spot over here just to the northeast of Fort Valley in Peach County, where we have nearly 1/4 of an inch of rain. But for the most part, everyone has seen some form of rain, but it's not exactly really measurable. Maybe only a few hundredths of an inch, or maybe even just simply a trace of rain that has continued to fall. Excuse me. So scattered showers are going to continue throughout today, but I did mention that not everyone's going to have the same forecast as we go into the afternoon hours. We'll talk about what I mean by saying that. Valentine's Day continues to trend dry. So for those date night plans, those dinner plans, they're looking good to go right now, even if they are outdoors, but we are going to have a messy into the weekend on Sunday. So maybe you got caught working the night shift on Valentine's Day. You were planning on taking your special someone out on Sunday. It is not looking like it's going to be a good day to do so, but it is just looking like it's mainly going to be in the form of some rain, unlike what we do have in store in the form of maybe some storms. We'll talk about the severe weather potential as well as we go into the back half of your weekend. So still gray and gloomy all across your 4 sky cams, but starting to see some spots of some clearing. I feel like I've had to say that each and every day so far on this stream, where we have started out with plenty of cloud cover, and that cloud cover tries to get out of the picture as we go into the afternoon. But it looks like down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, the only glimpse of some blue sky that we can get. We have a bit of a southerly component to our wind, so the flag's blowing from left to right and also kind of still coming out of that southwesterly direction. You can see them angled just a little bit as well. And we can see up here in downtown Macon, plenty of dark clouds. There might be a few dark clouds in downtown Dublin, but the big takeaway is our surfaces. They are still a little bit damp in nature. They're not necessarily really slippery like you would see, say, if you were to receive some pretty heavy rainfall totals. So that's kind of what these light showers have done so far this morning. They've just created a bit of a damp environment at the surface, but overall not leading to much in the way of accumulation or maybe some puddles in the forecast. So current temperatures, you can really see where our cold front is settled up or nestled right now across the eastern United States, where you do see some of the areas of the light blue and the dark blue. That's going to be behind the cold front, where that cold front is present, or where that cold air is present behind the cold front. And then you can see it kind of drapes across this line where the blue transitions into the green across areas of northern Arkansas, up into Tennessee, all the way up into the Appalachian Mountains, and back over here as you get into northwestern Texas. Significantly colder up in Amarillo than it is down in Houston, where you do see a temperature of 73 degrees near the coast. So 73, that looks like the warmest number here on your temperature map. 71 in Panama City and New Orleans, then getting to a 63 in Jacksonville. In fact, 66 here in Macon. We are warmer than the atmosphere down in Jacksonville currently. And down here in the southeast United States, once again, we spot those 70s over on the Gulf Coast around Mobile and Pensacola. Everyone else scattered about the 60s, with the exception of some of that colder air that's trying to usher in here in real time into areas like Huntsville up in northern Alabama. But everyone else looks like that number has a 6 in front of it, whether you're in the low, the mid, or maybe the upper 60s. Here in central Georgia, would you believe it if I told you that these numbers are only about 3 degrees warmer than what we started out with? It has been a very, very warm morning. In fact, we had many temperature values right around 63 degrees, which is an important number for today because that's going to be your average afternoon high temperature. We were already starting out with that for our morning low value in a select few spots. I know Warner Robins was sitting around 63 degrees a couple times. So we have seen a slight increase, but the cloudy skies have really inhibited our warm up. But we are getting a bit of a head start compared to the last couple of days that we dipped down, say in the 40s, maybe even into the upper 30s. We have a little bit of a longer way to go when we do dip down that low on the temperature side of things. But when we kept the cloud cover in the forecast, your numbers are going to be significantly warmer. And we also have a more humid air mass, and that is also a big reason for these numbers hovering in the 60s for quite a while now. Along with those warmer temperatures, winds and wind gusts, they are going to continue to blow all throughout today. We are going to have some steady winds, steady breeze, maybe up to 10 to 15 miles per hour, but some occasional gusts in these yellow shaded areas and some of these red shaded areas that will be present in some pockets and some isolated spots. That's where we're going to have the potential for some gusts up to 20 to maybe even 25 miles per hour. So let's take it over to your satellite and radar picture. Cloud cover still very widespread, but where you're starting to see maybe a bit more of a fainter gray, when you're starting to see more of kind of a bright white color to your gray, a lighter gray, that's going to indicate some denser cloud cover than some of these areas that are a little bit darker. That's indicating that maybe some thin cloud cover is a little bit higher up in the sky, but not necessarily doing too good of a job at blocking some sunshine. Rain is now located just down in our southernmost counties currently, where we continue to see scattered light rain, maybe even some pockets of steady rain if you're down there along the corner of Pulaski, Wilcox, and Dodge counties. We can see a couple more sprinkles over to the east across Wheeler, Montgomery, and Toombs counties, and a couple right there near Soperton along the I-16 corridor of Truitland County. Up to the north, we have seen a lot of that light rain finally clear out of the forecast, but still a couple clusters of some showers to the northeast of us along I-20, getting up into Augusta. And taking a look at this picture as a whole, our frontal boundary is still going to be well off to the north of us. So all of this rain up here in North Georgia, maybe into North Alabama, that's going to continue to come down into Central Georgia as we go throughout the rest of today. So it looks like we're hitting a bit of a gap in these rain showers that we currently have, but we'll talk more about what to expect for the rest of today coming up in just a brief moment. So yesterday's almanac, we hit a high temperature of 73 degrees, 43 degrees for a morning low. So we were just above average by about 5 degrees on that. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart right there when it comes to doing some mental math. But yes, 5 degrees. I was just double checking in my head. 38 degrees is where we typically start out at. That's going to also be an important number to keep in mind as we go into the next couple of days. 62 degrees for an average high temperature. We obviously blew that out of the water. And 73 degrees. This is the first time we've returned into the 70s since we go back into early January, which early January doesn't seem like the time we would typically have highs in the 70s. Nonetheless, it has been a welcome treat after the very cold spell as of recently. And then 81 degrees. That was your record high set back in 1932. Fell about 8 degrees shy of hitting that number yesterday, but it's a whole lot closer on the high temperature we recorded yesterday as opposed to our low temperature yesterday morning compared to your record low of 16 degrees back in 1971. So typically February is a whole lot colder than what we have seen as of yesterday, but we will take a little bit of this premature preview of some springtime weather. Precipitation, none recorded yesterday. We didn't have any rain chances that were in the forecast, and minus 3.45 inches below where we should be at this point of the year. I imagine today's rainfall totals, they're not going to really help put too good of a dent in this. This number may drop all the way down to 4 inches below where we should be at this point in the year before we finally actually get maybe about an inch or two of rain as we go into the course of the end of your weekend. Sunrise time 7:22 yesterday and sunset 6:16 p.m. So obviously those days continue to get longer. But let's go ahead and circle back to your high temperature from yesterday because it did mark the second day in a row that we were above average and the fourth day for the entire month that we have been above average, tallying a red box here on the calendar graphic, with the exception of Sunday, which was exactly on par for average, but I would still classify 62 degrees as a pleasantly warm afternoon that we did have to wrap up the weekend. This past weekend, I would say we're about half and half. It has been equally as cold as it has been equally as warm for the month of February thus far, according to those boxes. And remember where we do stand in terms of your numbers, some of your records and things. 61 for an average high at the beginning of the month and 37 for an average low temperature. Remember what we just talked about. 62 and 38 are your averages now. And as we go into the end of the month of February, we are going to see those numbers increase a good deal more. 42 for an average low by the time we wrap up the month, and then 67 degrees for an average high temperature. We are going to begin to flirt with the 70-degree mark for what your average high temperature should be. So by the time we get into the tail end of February, maybe seeing some numbers in the 70s isn't going to be too atypical, but right now this far into the beginning of the month where our averages are a little bit lower, some 70s are definitely not the normal for the month of February, but no complaints from this weatherman right here. I'm definitely enjoying the warmer stretch of weather that we do have. And again, we will gain 50 minutes of daylight over the month of February, where that sunrise continues to get just about a minute earlier each day, and sunset gets just about a minute later each and every day. So right now, sunset around 6:16 is what it did say yesterday. 6:30 is going to be when our sun does set at the beginning of the month, and then 7:03, pretty close to the 7 a.m. hour, is when the sun will begin to rise. So as we go about the month of February, I guess Valentine's Day going to be our next important date to kind of look out for. That's when we're going to cross back over above 11 hours of daylight. So we're really searching for finally getting above that 12-hour mark, because that's going to mark the first time that we can finally have more hours of sunshine as opposed to nighttime. Right now, we still have more hours of nighttime compared to daytime as we go throughout a daily basis. But getting back to 11 hours is pretty good progress, considering on the shortest day of the year, which was sometime at the end of December, we had 9 hours and 59 minutes of daylight. So we've seen the hours of daylight increase by about an hour over the course of the last month and a half. And then going into the second to last day of February, February 27th, that's when the sunset is going to return to 6:30 p.m. And obviously that is going to continue to mark a time frame where that sunset gets later and later. But the most significant change that you will see in the future is going to be on March 8th. That is going to be when we start daylight saving time once again. And what that means is we are going to spring forward. So you're losing an hour of sleep, but that hour of sleep that you're sacrificing is going to mean that you are going to get a later sunset around when it should be, sometime around 7:37 p.m., but also your sunrise is going to get an hour later. So it does look like our sunrise is actually going to be around 6:53 a.m., but obviously with the time change, it is going to be more so around 7:53 a.m. right there. So those are some important dates to be on the lookout for in the near future. Otherwise, your forecast for today, how about a similar high temperature to yesterday, 74 degrees, and it is mainly because we started out so warm already this morning. We will get some peaks of sunshine, and that allows for a warm up as we go into the tail end of the afternoon. But overall, your numbers don't have to warm up as much as they did, say, yesterday, where we started out somewhere in the upper 30s, maybe the low 40s in some areas. So we don't have as much ground to cover in order to reach those above average high temperatures. And like I mentioned, some sunshine later, but it's going to be a good mix of a lot of different elements throughout the second half of your Wednesday. We're going to have some sunny skies, some areas that may have a mostly cloudy environment. It's still a bit gloomy. Some areas that hold on to some rain chances, and some areas that are just dealing with nothing but maybe some gusty winds. We do have the potential for some gusts up to 25 miles per hour throughout the rest of today. And taking a look at your hour-by-hour meteogram, it does make me pretty confident in the temperature prediction, which in fact, I went a little bit above what the graphic said yesterday, and I actually overshot the high temperature by 1 degree. But nonetheless, these numbers are still feeling in the same neighborhood of one another. If we peak at 72 degrees as opposed to 74 degrees, there's not too much difference when it does come to that forecast. It is still a very pleasant spring feeling afternoon that we do have. And then as we go into the evening, or I guess late afternoon and early evening hours, that's when the numbers drop back into the 60s. We're actually going to watch those numbers drop down quite a good bit as we go into the nighttime hours tonight, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. So I drew this surface map about 3 hours ago around the 8 a.m. hour, and you can already see kind of some of the progress that it has made. It looks like actually this boundary is continuing to push farther down to the south. It might actually be draped right across central Georgia right now, because we can start to get a glimpse of where these winds begin to clash. They have been coming out of the south and the southwest over the last couple of days, but behind the frontal boundary, it shifts the wind direction. So you can see the winds filtering in out of the north behind this front. So I do believe it's coming just a little bit farther down to the south right now, and maybe not necessarily lining up specifically with where these showers are exactly situated. But what you need to know is the front's to the north of us, and it's going to push down to the south and the southeast throughout the rest of today, and that is going to have implications for your forecast as we go into Thursday and Friday. So here's a look a couple hours into the future. 3 p.m. later this afternoon as you're wrapping up maybe the school day, maybe getting off of work a little bit earlier. So as we get some breaks in cloud cover, you can see that cloud cover isn't covering all areas of central Georgia. In fact, if I were to drag this back to maybe closer to around lunchtime, it would show clearing in our southernmost counties and plenty of available sunshine. What that sunshine does is it heats the surface. So when you heat the surface, it creates a lot of rising motion, especially ahead of a frontal boundary, which already has a lot of lift and rising motion ahead of it. So it will be lifting some slightly warmer and some slightly more humid air, and that's why we're going to watch kind of another line of some spotty showers, maybe even some pockets of steady and some heavy rain try to pop up ahead of this boundary as it does drive in from north to south. It does look like those showers are going to hang around in our southernmost counties a little bit later into the afternoon. I think we'll see some clearing from the rain in our northernmost counties for predominantly the rest of today, to be honest. We might see a few more showers that try to pop up over the next hour, 2 or 3, but I do think if we're talking about rain chances closer to evening commute time, maybe going into dinner time, that's really just going to be for our southernmost counties. And once again, we'll have some pockets of some yellow, of some orange, maybe even some red. I wouldn't even doubt or throw it out of the realm of possibility of hearing a rumble of thunder, but we're not really forecasting anything in the way of storms, and we're not forecasting anything in the way of severe weather by any means. This is just going to be a frontal boundary that's working off the heat of the day, and then as we go into the nighttime hours, that front continues to pass through down to the south. Eventually the cloud cover does clear, and then we go into Thursday morning, which does look to be a mostly clear start to the day, and then we are going to keep the predominantly sunny skies in the forecast for not only Thursday afternoon, but also as we go into Friday morning. Still some passing clouds here and there, so not necessarily crystal clear maybe at any point of the day until maybe we get to Friday afternoon, where you do see nothing but sunshine right here. Not a single cloud in the sky, but some of those will try to build back in as we go into your Saturday forecast. But I still don't think any cloud cover that we see after today is going to result in anything in the way of precipitation chances. So here's a look at how much more rain we should add on to the totals we've seen so far. And still really not significant whatsoever, but our southernmost counties. Say if you get lucky and you see one of those batches of some steadier, maybe even some heavier rainfall, that could dump maybe about 1/4 of an inch of rain in a select few spots, but that's not going to be widespread. As you can see, most of central Georgia might receive a little bit more rain, but a lot of these shaded green areas are not amounting to anything even of about 1/10 of an inch of rain. So this isn't a very substantial rainmaker whatsoever. We've been saying that since we got a glimpse of it on the long range models as of this time last week, and that is what's coming to fruition. But it is continuing to create a bit of a messy and a dreary and a gloomy atmosphere, but I promise you it will be very short-lived. As we go into the rest of the work week, we're going to welcome back some sunshine, and we are going to dry out really quickly in light of sunshine, leading to a whole lot of evaporation of any of that water that's standing at the surface. So through the rest of today, you will see maybe even some gusts possible up to 30 miles per hour, and that's going to really be in those shades of red. I think it's mainly in east central Georgia if we see any of those gusts up to that magnitude, but mainly we are going to see some gusts up to 20 to 25 miles per hour for the most part. The breeze subsides into Thursday afternoon, and then we go into Friday afternoon as well. Also, kind of the absence of winds. I feel like we've had at least a light breeze or maybe a steady breeze just about each of the last couple of days. So maybe a day without some winds is going to be quite welcome here in our forecast, because I wouldn't doubt for a fact that they are going to return some of those gusty winds as we go into the tail end of your weekend on Sunday. So over the next 3 days, 74 cools down into 66 and 67 degrees for Thursday and Friday afternoon high temperatures. That's still going to be an above average temperature, and that is also going to be a very mild forecast. It's going to be very similar to what it felt like on Monday, where we had a high temperature of 68 degrees, but we're going to have so much sunshine in the forecast it's still going to be a great atmosphere for any outdoor plans that you have to wrap up the work week. It's just maybe not going to feel as good as, say, the low 70s felt yesterday and the low 70s feel today, but the low 70s today are still paired up with your fair share of rain chances. 60% chance of rain, that was covering the entirety of today. Rain has been pretty widespread for the first half of today, especially in the early morning hours. Yes, it was of the light shower and kind of the sprinkle variety, but almost everyone in central Georgia has received something in the way of rain. So I would say that only a select few spots. If I were to revisit this forecast as of right now, I would probably put more of about a 30 to maybe 40% at tops chance of rain for the rest of today, and it would be down to the south. I would highlight that it's mainly going to be south central Georgia for the rest of today. But also, even though the next 2 afternoons are going to be some pretty pleasant temperatures and paired up with plenty of sunshine, let's not discount your morning lows. Going back into the upper 30s, yes, this feels like absolutely nothing compared to the low 20s and the upper teens we have seen as recently as about 2 weeks ago. 38 is going to be around where we should be this time of year, but that is also going to be a pretty chilly environment. So you're going to want to make sure you're dressing in layers for Thursday and into Friday. We are going to have at least a forecast that you'll want some form of a coat, maybe even some sweatpants over the shorts weather as you go into the morning hours around 7 to 8 a.m. But by the afternoon, you won't need any of those layers whatsoever, as we will have a bit of a taste of spring once again. And so your afternoon highs, they don't really vary much over the course of Thursday into Sunday. 74 is obviously a bit of the outlier, but all your numbers continue to be above average even as we go throughout the weekend. And Sunday right now is looking like it is going to be a very messy day on tap, even still a high temperature of 66 degrees. So obviously we are continuing to make the most out of this warmer air mass that has settled in. Your morning low temperatures right around average. And this graphic really does a great job of showing which days start to see an increase in cloud cover and rainy conditions during those nighttime hours, because that's exactly what we had present as of last night into this morning. So the cloud cover already helps create some warmer temperatures, especially when it's as dense in nature as it was this morning. And along with that, when you start to get an influx in moisture content, you raise the dew point temperatures. Well, the actual temperatures can't go below what the dew point temperatures are. So those dew point temperatures and that moisture influx does raise what your morning low temperature values are. I think I saw a 57 really early this morning, but other than that, I think the lowest we got was 59 across many areas in central Georgia. But then we clear out and we go back down to around average with low temperatures in the upper 30s, and then 52 for a low temperature, 52 is seeming like it should be a high temperature off of recent weeks, but we are going to get cloud cover and some moisture back in the forecast as we go overnight Saturday into Sunday morning, and that obviously is telling the story about which day next is going to have its fair share of some widespread rain chances. So here's a look at your Saturday afternoon, all through the morning, even into the late afternoon. Look at this, partly cloudy skies for Valentine's Day. It is looking good to go for any dinner plans that you do have, but I would make plans to go ahead and be safe than sorry and just make plans to head home a little bit earlier, because we could see rain move in as early as the late night hours on Saturday. Right now, both the long range models are showing right now that the rain chances are going to be around Sunday, but it does look like the European model is the only one buying stock in the fact that rain is going to move in, say, earlier in the morning. This is around 5 a.m. where some showers do begin to creep in. Looks like they get heavier in nature as we go throughout the rest of the morning hours, closer to the afternoon. The GFS in green is trailing a little bit behind. I'm more inclined to believe this European model version, where I do think our rain chances are going to start earlier in the day on Sunday. But then as we go into the afternoon, this is what I do believe according to the GFS. If we are to have anything in the way of potential storms, in the way of potential severe weather, it would be during the afternoon when our temperatures are at their warmest. But overall, the severe weather chances are still remaining really low, like very low as of right now. They are non-zero, but we have not been outlined in any form of a risk right now, so there's no reason to worry about anything in the way of severe weather unless we tell you otherwise. So the main thing that we're trying to do is specifically fine-tune what time of the day on Sunday, or maybe even getting into late Saturday, that we are going to see those rain chances. But one thing is for certain, everyone in central Georgia is going to get some rainfall, and hopefully it is going to be some very beneficial rainfall, which every sign has pointed in that direction as of recently. We go into the nighttime hours on Sunday, GFS hinting at maybe even a severe weather risk over in southeast Georgia. That's out of our vicinity. Rain chances are tapering off as early as the nighttime hours on Sunday, and then it looks like we go into Monday, where I've held on to a 10% chance of some rain, maybe just still seeing a little bit of lingering moisture. But after that, I think we enter a dry stretch. We see the return of sunshine on Tuesday, and then maybe some form of a frontal boundary that tries to come through as we go into next Wednesday. Wouldn't that be appropriate? The third Wednesday in a row where we are seeing some rain. It's kind of funny this time of year how you can start to see weather patterns like following a schedule over the course of about a week. We did see that a lot with last year's severe weather systems because they were all coming in on what seemed like a weekend each and every week. So it does typically kind of follow the trend of about every 5 to 7 days, I would say, some major weather systems coming in, but sometimes they can happen more frequently than that as well. So here's a look at future views rainfall if we go according to that GFS model that we did see on the last graphic. So that was the green shade. Most totals in central Georgia look like they're hovering somewhere around an inch, maybe up to about 1.5 inches. But farther down to the south is where some heavier rainfall can be found. So that's going to result in some totals maybe up to 2 inches. Or if you start to get into kind of this red and maroon color down in our very southernmost counties, some totals up to 3 inches possible. Now, I think the general range of 1 to 2 inches all across central Georgia right now, that's a pretty good range to follow because the European model is not picking up on some totals maybe up to 3 inches in nature. Right now, it is just looking like somewhere around 1 inch or 2, maybe some areas that fall just below that range, some areas that could fall in the upper end of that range or maybe even above the 2-inch mark. But nonetheless, 1 to 2 inches of rain will be very beneficial, especially given how dry that we have been lately, which I will talk about in just a moment. But we have seen this, which also kind of reiterates our confidence in the substantial rainfall totals. And this obviously does look like a bad thing when we're talking about excessive rainfall outlooks, and I'm showing you a marginal risk of some isolated flash flooding. What I'm meaning by this is really just some nuisance flooding. So we're going to see the ponding of areas that don't necessarily drain well. We're obviously going to see maybe some of those gutters and ditches on the side of the road. They're going to pond up pretty well, but that's not going to really result in anything in the way of some life-threatening or some damaging flash flooding. Yes, you might have the potential for some areas that get a whole bunch of rain, but I'm talking about maybe 4 to 5 inches of rain over a short time frame. That would result in maybe some potentially dangerous flash flooding. This is more just the ponding of water in some areas where it doesn't necessarily drain well, and this is going to be valid for Monday through Monday, and this goes for basically the entirety of the state of Georgia, but all of central Georgia. So this does kind of reiterate some confidence that we will see some pretty substantial rainfall, especially when you compare it to some of the rainfall that, or really any rainfall, I guess for that matter, that we have received in the year of 2026. And then your drought monitor. I did mention that we have been very dry lately. Everyone still under a severe or a moderate drought. And in fact, Macon-Bibb County, we have been under drought or abnormally dry conditions, which is just saying, okay, we could use a little bit of rain. That's going to be the yellow category before you transition into drought conditions. We've been under these since September 16th. We had a very wet month of August, and then we went all the way into the month of September with really not receiving much in the way of rainfall. And then that obviously did start our stretch where we have needed some rain ever since then. So it's been a good stretch of, I guess, going on about 4 or 5 months now where we really could use some rain. Hopefully this does provide for some relief, but that will be on next week's drought monitor, whatever we get over the course of this weekend. And even today's rainfall that we've gotten, it's just a little bit. I wouldn't anticipate it to really help improve conditions whatsoever, but that will also be taken into account on next week's drought monitor. We will be getting another release of this as of tomorrow morning, just past the 9 a.m. hour, and that data will be taken as of this past Tuesday. So we'll see if we can get any improvement before the widespread rainmakers do arrive as we go into this weekend. But overall, I'm not anticipating too much improvement. So we definitely can use the rain, and it looks like we are going to get our fill of rain. We're just really trying to fine-tune the timing of it, which obviously could have some implications for any weekend plans that you do have. But as of right now, Valentine's Day is trending dry for the most part. That 20% chance is going to be around the nighttime hours. So maybe towards the tail end of any dinner plans that you do have. Otherwise, I expect mainly a partly cloudy day throughout the entirety of your Saturday. So looking good to go for the first 2 days of your weekend if you do have any outdoor plans. And we are going to see some more mild temperatures, but still going to feel very nice for each and every afternoon that you do have some dry moments Thursday, Friday, all the way through Saturday, even Sunday, when we are going to have a very messy atmosphere. It does look like maybe if we can get those rain chances to move in earlier on Sunday morning, we can start to clear out for the back half of the day. But 66 degrees, that remains your high temperature for Sunday right now. I imagine both this morning low and this afternoon high are going to creep closer and closer together, because if we keep the cloud cover and the rain in the atmosphere all day long, that's going to really result in not as much of a temperature spread between your highs and your lows. Then we go into President's Day next Monday. It might be a day off of school, might be a day off of work for you. I have a 10% chance of rain right now, and that's really just going to be mainly in the morning hours. I think President's Day Monday is going to be a great afternoon forecast with still some above average numbers. And if that's not warm enough for your liking, well, return of the 70s and return of sunshine with no rain chances as we go into next Tuesday. So looking like a pretty good 7-day forecast, but we just really got to get through that one blemish, which is Sunday now that we're heading into the back half of your Wednesday and most of your rain chances are out of here. But continue to keep the rain gear handy for the rest of today. Until then, you can throw it in the back of the closet until Sunday. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.